education, and ensuring individuals feel seen, heard, and supported as they navigate life's challenges. Please welcome Roxanne.
Thank you. How's everybody doing? Right at the end of the day, we're going to make it. We have 1 hour together. Well, I'm going to start by introducing myself, share a little bit about me before we move into the presentation. So I always like to share that I'm a mother of 4. I was a single mom for a really long time. And raised any single moms in here? Any? Yeah. It's not for the weak, that's for sure. I have 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, ages ranging from 34 to my baby is 22. I know, I don't look that old, do I? I have not had an easy life. And you know, I know we all have experiences here. It's interesting talking to individuals that are working in this industry of funeral directors. I'm like, what can I say to them? But life hasn't been easy. And what I mean by that is at a young age, I was abused by my mom. And the reason I share this with you is because a lot of times with mental health, things go unrecognized and unnoticed. And even I, as a small child, had no idea what was happening to me. It was normal. Until I started going to other people's homes and was like, wow, this isn't really normal, right? With that, I found myself kind of being a fighter. And what I mean by that is like I was the one to step in front of someone to protect them if you were going to harm them. Anybody in here like that? Yeah, I was also fiery. Not salty, but fiery. I was a protector. And I didn't know I had all of those skills. I didn't have the words to attach to myself. All I knew is that my mom was not a safe person. My dad was a truck driver. He was always gone. So I was always home with that unsafe person. I didn't trust people because of the experiences that I had. Do I have any talkers in here that were, when you were in school, were you a talker? Did you get in trouble for talking? I'd love to see a show of hands. Yes, amen, I'm not alone. I was definitely a talker. In fact, my nickname from my uncle was Motormouth. Because I talk so much. Probably said a whole lot of nothing back then. When I was 13 years old, I did a lot of babysitting. And we had a family that I babysat that their child, 2 of children died in a fire. And I'm 12 to 13 years old. That was my first initial experience with death. And no one talked about it. It was just, it happened. We had the funeral, we moved on. Well, I couldn't move on. And so as I'm in English class, I'm trying to express myself through writing. And I talk too much. We had a sub, and my teacher came back and I got a note that I was talking too much. And what was happening is that I was trying to express my feelings. I needed a safe adult to talk to about this. But, you know, back in the early 80s, that was disruptive, right? So with that being said, what has shaped me to be here today is a whole lot of life experiences that really sucked. That's the reality of it. Now, there's a lot of good stuff in there. But when you have adverse experiences, it's really hard to look at life from a lens that's positive. So I always chose the hard road because I didn't know there was another road that existed. So with that being said, I hope you can appreciate my jokes because they're really not that great at telling them. Raise of hands of those in here that got in trouble again for talking in school. Well, let me tell you, I got a special place in the principal's office. Okay. So special that the secretaries had candy sitting there for me when I would come down. Because my principal did not appreciate my fiery side. And I love telling that because joke's on him because I speak for a living, right? So that's my joke for today. Now, I want to know, before I move on, if Marty Mitchell, is he in here? Marty? Marty's not in here, okay. I also, here's kind of a fun joke. Lenny, I hope you don't mind me throwing this out there. So, I'm originally from Hardin County, and Mr. Lenny Lynn back there is our undertaker in Iowa Falls, one of them. And I'm young, I'm in my 20s, I'm a mom, I'm racing to get my kid to elementary school. And I ran in front of his car. He rolls down his window and he looks at me and he goes, "Didn't anybody ever tell you not to run out in front of an undertaker?" Yeah. So I'm like, I like that guy. I like that guy. And I know the joke is, we spoke yesterday that he's my favorite undertaker. So maybe I should, aside of Marty Mitchell. But anyway, thank you. Thank you for letting me use that, Lenny. All right. Let's see. I'm used to having somebody click this for me, so bear with me on that. So today, what we're going to talk about is the effects on mental health, the effects of mental health and stress. I bet you guys don't have any of that. No? How to reduce it. Discuss the new districts in Iowa. So if you're not from Iowa, you'll get a little bit of education of the new system change here in our state. And then we're going to talk about identifying the gaps in behavioral health. And then I'm going to introduce you to a new program called the Compassion Team Coalition, and that's where I'll share more of my story. So, have you ever just felt like in this industry you just get stacked so high to the point that you're kind of feeling a little anxious, uncomfortable? Anybody felt kind of like you're drowning, like you're underwater? Anybody? Yeah. So I don't have to tell you to imagine an invisible weight being carried every single day, and and how it affects how you think and you feel and how you interact with the world, but nobody sees it. This is the reality for a lot of people, millions of people across the state, across the U.S. That have mental health challenges. So back to when I was a little girl, I got removed from my mom's care, and I was put into a foster home in which my foster dad was my softball coach. I lived about 3 blocks in my foster home from my high school. It was really embarrassing, right? You don't want anybody to know what's going on. And unfortunately, because of the small town that I lived in, everybody knew. But because I'm fiery, I persevered and I pushed through. But when I was about 13 to 14 years old, I started seeing a therapist, and I was diagnosed with an adjustment disorder. And for the longest time, I had no idea what that even was. And it turns out, it's just, they got to attach something to you so they can bill for you, right? And so my adjustment disorder was really that I don't do well when big events happen, such as death. I'm 50 years old, and I'm going to stand here and tell you I still don't deal well with that. And I'm okay with that. I know it's a natural part of life, but for me, it's just something I've always struggled with. So let's talk about what mental health is. Does anybody in here want to just give it a shot, what you think mental health is, how you would describe mental health? No. So it's an emotional and psychological and social well-being. It affects how we think and we feel, our stress responses, and it's just as important, obviously, as our physical health. And so I'm not here to give you an anatomy run through, but what I will tell you is that all these adverse experiences that I had, and then growing up, I found myself in a really, really bad relationship. And he was my second abuser. And it was pretty bad. To the point that I wanted to take my own life. I'm usually a very happy-go-lucky person. You know, no one back in my hometown. I lived in Iowa Falls for 31 years, raised my children, and I'll tell you, no one really knew. My family didn't even know. I hid it so well. And I know a lot of times when we have children and young adults, you know, or farmers, anyone that ends their life, it's always that question, why? Why? Or the question, I didn't see this. Well, that's because we don't want you to. We don't want you to. I learned at a really young age to hide how I felt, suppress it, hold it in, go to school, act like everything was okay. None of my friends knew that I was being abused at home. In fact, my aunt just passed away. We had our celebration of life last Saturday, and I was talking to my uncle. He had no idea. He just didn't talk about it. Who was I going to tell? Right? Everybody around me was connected to my mom, so I couldn't say anything. The only one that knew was my dad, and he was my protector. Right? So, sorry, step back up here. So when we talk about that physical health piece, when I go into these situations where someone maybe has died, or a family member or a loved one, maybe someone really close to me, I have a really hard time adjusting to those situations. And in 2024, we had a situation that landed on our doorstep that I never, ever could imagine navigating. And with that experience, I couldn't get my central nervous system to calm down. And I couldn't figure out why. You know, here I am, I'm trained, I counsel people, I support people, I walk alongside of people. But in that moment at 50 years old, I could not reel it in. Normally, I would use my techniques that have supported me along the way, and that's what we're going to dive into next. But before I go to my next slide here, how do you all take care of yourselves? What does that look like for you? You're surrounded by death all the time. Can someone just give me a couple examples of what you do to take care of yourself?
Talk to your spouse.
Pardon?
Talk to your spouse.
Talk to your spouse.
I like to check in on friends. Make sure that they're living like
No. That supports you. Okay? Anybody else?
Exercise.
Who said that? Exercise. Yes, absolutely. In fact, 30 minutes of exercise is equivalent to one antidepressant. Did you know that? Amazing. It is. I'd rather run. I don't look like I should be running, but I'd rather run, right? So, ooh. I don't know what's going on there with that. Boy, that's interesting. I promise I didn't do that. So I kind of lined out some of the unique challenges that we face as a service provider, but what I would imagine that you face as being individuals who are responding to all of these deaths and picking up loved ones and managing the crisis as this happens, right? Working with these families and supporting them. And I really apologize, I can't believe this slide looks like this. But we have constant exposure to grief, emotional labor, professional composure expectations, kind of going back to you gotta keep it together, because if you don't keep it together, then maybe you're not very professional, right? That's suppressing emotion, not healthy, and it's not good for our physical health. Signs of mental strains are burnout, compassion fatigue, sleep issues, and irritability or numbness. Did any of you experience that? If you get a wave of deaths? Yeah, I'm seeing some head nods. Yeah. We do too at NAMI. Now, what I want to share with you about NAMI is each NAMI in the state of Iowa is very unique. My affiliate happens to be one of the largest in the state of Iowa in terms that we have a large catchment area and we provide 15 programs in those areas. And this last year, we have administered to 3 homicides, one in which 3 people were shot. One lived, and the individual that shot them ended his life. That happened in my hometown, small town. We have administered services to families who have lost their children 15 years old and younger. It's been tough. So when I talk about the commonalities of what we do at my affiliate in conjunction with what you are all doing, it goes hand in hand. And it's why I'm here. I met Marty Mitchell through a colleague of mine. And he said to me, he's like, Roxanne, he goes, we need your help. I sat with him for 3 hours in his office, and he shared with me the amount of suicides that had taken place in Marshall County from December to January and now continuing. They just lost someone that was in the farming industry and served on their board of supervisors. They just lost to suicide. It's an astronomical amount of lives taken by suicide. And when I was talking with him, I shared some more of my personal experience, and I had a lot of questions. And I was like, why are we not working together? Why have I never sat in front of funeral directors in the 6 years I've been running this organization? It didn't dawn on me until we had that personal experience, which I will get to, that landed on our doorstep. But it started the conversation, and that's how I landed here today. I called because I just thought, oh, we'll do a tabling event. Let's see if we can get in to do a tabling event. And there happened to be a slot open for a speaker, and I was invited to come. And so I am so grateful to be here with all of you. Oh, well, look at that. I don't know what happened there. There's a bed. Look at it, you can see now. Oh, goodness. All right. So you had identified some things, like talking to friends, talking to your spouse, that help kind of reduce that stress and maybe provide some relaxation. This is one of my go-tos. This is my favorite thing to do. Some people are like, I'm not doing that. This, for me, has improved my health. It has improved my mental health, my physical health. And so I wanted to point out, so our mindful and meditation, is anybody in here doing any mindful meditation practices currently? Are they not the best? Right? Did it take you a little bit to get into it?
It took a little bit to buy in.
Yeah.
It seems a little
Weird.
weird, but so especially for
I love sharing this story that I'm about to tell you. So I decided I needed a career change for like a year, so I went and worked in a school. And I got to go up to the elementary class and do specials. And it was my favorite time with these kids. And working with kids most of my career, it was pretty easy to pick up on some of those kiddos that were struggling a little bit more, than others. And I always knew the ones that had a lot of trauma, because part of meditation practice is you got to close your eyes, right? You got to sit still and close your eyes. And so I was able to identify pretty quickly who did not trust me and who had adverse experiences and who didn't, because those kiddos, they'd be like looking at me like, I ain't closing my eyes. I'm gonna keep my eye on you, right? This is something that does not happen overnight. It is a practice. How many of you in here have a hard time just slowing down your mind? Yeah, it's tough. My brain doesn't shut off sometimes. It's so annoying. Last night was one of them. 3 hours of sleep last night, thanks to these storms. Because I require safety, and I didn't feel safe, so I couldn't shut my eyes. And so I got my handy-dandy headphones out, popped them in, and started focusing on that present moment of where I was at. Started basically honoring the day, right, where it had taken me. I got to connect with a lot of you that are sitting in this room. And so I started focusing on gratitude. And it started reducing that emotional overload and that stress and like all the things I had to do and making sure that my presentation was right. And I hope some people show up tomorrow. It's at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. I mean, all of these things were kind of going through my head. So I started doing my breathing techniques, and they really, really work. Now, cognitive behavioral health therapy, are anybody in here familiar with that? Some heads nodding. So cognitive behavioral health therapy, CBT, it helps reframe the negative thinking. So if you have had a lot of adverse experiences in your life and you have a really hard time not being able to find that positive, not being able to find that type of gratitude, it's just too hard to go over there to that road that's not hard. CBT is a wonderful therapy, and a lot of children use that along with EMDR to help kind of change the way the brain is functioning and how it thinks, and so it starts to heal itself. It's effective for ongoing stress and anxiety. I know you had mentioned physical activity, lowers stress hormones and improves mood and energy. As much as sometimes at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do is go outside and go for a walk, because I got 16 other things I could be doing, right? I force myself because it really does release those endorphins in your brains, and it really makes a difference, and it also, as you know, improves our overall health. So mind-body practices, yoga and Tai Chi. I just got an app of the Tai Chi, and I've done one day, 9 minutes. It ain't no joke. It ain't no joke. I can see why it gets people into shape real quick. Yoga is not for me, but that's the beauty about this, is that you get choices and options. So it combines the movement and breathing, promotes relaxation and balance. Move on to social support. So obviously talking to others reduces emotional burden. I've always found that one. I like that one. But sometimes it's hard because I feel like people don't understand. They can't keep up with this fast brain of mine, right? And I'm kind of like all over the place, and they're like, "What is going on with you?" But I do talk to people. I do that. Helps prevent isolation. That's a really big one. So a lot of individuals that live with mental health conditions, isolation is the biggest one. When we don't feel safe, we pull back. If we don't trust you, we pull back, right? And if we have, let's say, schizophrenia, we're pulling even further back, right? Because typically with these mental illnesses is not only is our brain not functioning at optimal level, but maybe someone's not medicated. Maybe someone, where let's just say we went to the ocean and they saw somebody attacked by a shark. Maybe it doesn't affect you for whatever reason, but it affects you pretty greatly, right? And you start to isolate because you can't manage those emotions and you're trying to figure it out, and you're going on with your day, and we can't figure out why. Why are you okay and why are you not, right? So those social supports are so important to stay connected. Connection is so healing, but when we are struggling with mental health, we often, that's the first thing we go to is I'm out of here. And that's our fight or flight mode. I wish I would have flew more. I was kind of that fighter. You come at me, I come at you. You hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you, right? Is there anybody in your life that what you're afraid of? Hold a hand up. You like that? Maybe your younger years. I'm not like that anymore. I grew up. But when you feel like you gotta protect yourself all the time, right? And sometimes you get that, it's called the fawn, that freeze. We have that, I didn't put that up there, but we have that freeze. That's the 3 stages of trauma. When you're experiencing something, either you're gonna go at it, or you're gonna step away from it, you're gonna isolate, or you're just gonna freeze and you're like, I don't even know what to do, right? So social supports will help that isolation, and it's so important. It's really difficult though when you are in that mist, especially if you're really deep into darkness. It's really, really hard to not isolate. And sometimes we often are like, well, can't you see that I'm not okay? We want people so badly to see that we're not okay, but yet we're hiding we're not okay. It's just this vicious cycle. And so I think you said you call and check on people, one of you. I love that. I love that because people need to feel that they're loved and that they're validated. You know, we live in a time where social media has taken over, and I mean, I think, you know, like my son, 22, I'd like to just take his phone and crack it in half. Like, I'm talking to you, yeah, Mom, I hear you. Yeah, yeah, Mom, could you hold on a minute? I'm trying to have a conversation with you, right? Like a normal person. Let's talk, put that phone down. But that's the reality, right? We live in a world right now of technology, and so it's been very interesting how since COVID, we're not connecting anymore. And we've seen a rise in tragedies because of that. Social media is good for some things, and I think it was intended for good, but unfortunately it's harmed our children and our young adults. So relaxation techniques. So deep breathing, muscle relaxation, quick and effective stress relief. Now the question is, do you believe me? Do you believe these work? Yeah, they really do. They're very simple, and if you can just slow down and practice and get your mind to do this. I didn't want, it's at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. If I give you one right now in a video, you might fall asleep on me, and so we're not going to do that. You know, check it out. There's so many free videos on YouTube that you can use to help, and it actually guides you and help you learn how to breathe and whatnot. If you do have a therapist, I know I connected with some of you between yesterday and today, and some of you had disclosed that you do have therapists. You know, you could talk to them. It's a more holistic way of going about it. I don't like to take medication. I have, but it's not my favorite thing. So I prefer to do things a little bit more holistically and kind of get out there and exercise and do those types of things to continue to keep me well. All right, we are going to move into the mental health system in Iowa. So how many of you in here are from Iowa? Okay. How many of you in here are familiar with the new statewide plan that has been conducted since July 1 of 25 here in Iowa? All right. Tell me one thing about it. Put you on the spot. Just give me one thing that you know about
There's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
it. Amen. Yes. Done a lot of work. We have a long ways to go. What has happened is that we have operated primarily for the last 14 to 15 years out of what was called regions. And so what they have done is that they have taken our regions away and they have put them in 7 districts. And I do have a map that I will go into. And so the folks that are involved are all of us behavioral health providers in the state of Iowa, HHS, Primary Care Association. And how this kind of came about is obviously, you can see up here, peer support and cost savings, right? So what has happened, which is beautiful, is that the state has recognized that people with lived experience who maybe don't have a licensure, their experience is of value. So much of value that they've put it into a peer support program that's now an Iowa code, where it's a billable service through Medicaid. I've been doing this 26 years and that's never ever happened. Pretty incredible. Very incredible. And what it does is it creates a space so that there's easier access to mental health services. Again, we have gaps, and so this is really, really crucial and it's important. And of course, it saves the state money, because that's the ultimate goal, right? Save lives and save money. I put the slide up here for our peer support. Basically what has happened, there's been a lot of studies done on how it reduced hospitalizations, lowered overall cost, increased service utilization, increased treatment engagement, improved quality of life, increased functioning, and decreased behavioral health symptoms. So again, when you go back to that connection and people healing, the first thing that happens when you're engaging in those relationships is you have to build trust. I cannot tell you how many people I've sat in front of when I was running my ministry, Atlas, which stands for Attaining Truth, Love, and Self-Control. And they would come to me and they would be struggling. Some of them close to wanting to end their lives. And I'd sit down with them. I'd be like, just tell me what's going on. They'd share a little bit. And then I said, do you mind if I share a little bit about myself with you? And I'm like, yeah. And so I went into my story. And I'll tell you, the guard that was up here was down here within about 5 to 10 minutes. Do you know why? Anybody want to give it a shot? Why do you think that happened?
They can relate.
They could relate to me. I would tell people, take all these badges off and, fancy clothes and all the things, my hair is a mess, whatever. I am just Roxanne Petersen, a regular person who has had adverse experiences. I just happen to take my pain and turn it into a powerful story. And I didn't do that alone. I did that because, for whatever reason, I love Jesus, just so y'all know, for whatever reason, God said, I'm going to place this girl with this lady whose dad's a pastor. And then I'm going to place her over here with another friend whose dad's a pastor. And this guy over here is a funeral director, and he believes in God. We're going to place her there too. Oh, and then your friends are going to ask you to go to Awanas. You got to memorize all these Bible verses, right? My mom wasn't taking me to church. People showed up for me. When I was in college, I was writing, my goal in life was just to be able to take care of my kids and be able to pay my bills. Like, I didn't care if I had $5 left, okay? And I started college, and I was just going to be an office practitioner. Get a 1-year diploma. I was going to just be in an office and answer phones and smile and customer service. Well, my student loan bill says otherwise, right? I had a professor, her name was Kelly Faga. This was at Ellsworth College in Iowa Falls. And I had a heck of a time transcribing. I could not transcribe, and the girl next to me, she's like, he's just going to town and doing things. Now you're like, oh, can't do this. I could, but I didn't believe in myself. And she walked past me and brought our portfolios we had to put together for that class. And she put a sticker on that said, stop selling yourself short. You know what happened in that moment? She saw me. Without knowing my story, without knowing what I was going through, she could recognize that I did not have the self-confidence that I needed to move on. And because of that no, I went on in school. I finally learned that somebody actually cares and they see you, and I didn't have to share all my stuff. It was so cool. I'd never had that experience. And that's what happens when we see people, and we connect with them. It brings them hope. And I've witnessed for the last 15 years, I've watched people's lives transform and change just because I was a regular person with a lived experience, and I shared that with individuals. And it's incredible. It's why I've been doing this 26 years. It gives me hope. As much as it's helping them, it feeds me hope and going, but what we're doing is working. So this slide is just sharing more about where we go, the spaces we go with peer support here in Iowa. And some of the differences that it makes. So increased self-esteem, right? And confidence. Increased sense of control and ability that brings change to someone's life. Maybe a peer support specialist gave them a ride to go to treatment because they were afraid to go on their own. My peer support will show up in the ERs. My peer support will come to the funeral home. My peer support will meet you in a coffee shop. They'll sit with you on a sidewalk. That's the beauty of this, is that we meet people where they are at. I have this guy, he happens to be homeless. I live over here in Ankeny, and when I come off the interstate from West Des Moines, if he's there, I always got money for him. And one time I got out of the car, and I'll tell you, I'm pretty sure I probably made a lot of people mad because I was getting right off the interstate, right? I don't care, because remember, I'm kind of sassy. And so I get out of the car, and I see him, and he's got a veteran's hat on. And my son served 10 years in the military as an Army Ranger, and we're a military family, and my heart, I'm like, I gotta know this guy's story. I gotta know. And people are looking at me like, what are you doing? you know? So, and I've not even quite 3 minutes, I got this guy's story. And his story was so impactful I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wanna drive here every day and give him $5, right? Within probably less than 3 minutes, I found out that he got kicked out of the military, that his son was gay, the reason he got kicked out of the military is because his son was beaten because he was gay, and he went back and retaliated against these individuals, and he went to prison. 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, I got this guy's story. And I looked at him and I said, can I give you a hug? And he said, absolutely. I gave him a hug and I said, I will see you again. And I handed him some money and off I went. But I saw him that day. I didn't judge him. I just wanted to know why. Why are you on this corner? What's going on in your life? What do you need? And I asked him, are you connected with this? Are you connected with this? Are you doing this or whatever, right? And he seemed pretty connected. But obviously doesn't have enough money to live in an apartment anywhere. But those are my favorite moments. Just meeting people where they are. It's powerful. So you're right, I'm going to come back to this. This has been a pain in my arse for the last year. So as you can see, the 7 districts in the state, Miami Central Iowa falls in District 2, 3, 5, and 6. So each of us affiliates have a catchment area that we cover. And as you can see, there are 14 counties that we currently cover right now in Iowa. And what we're doing, the goal of the state is to create a holistic system to where you call me and you say, Roxanne, we have had a suicide, homicide. We need extra resources. Will you meet with this family? Yes, I will. We built a relationship, we're filling a gap, and we're reducing, the hope is to reduce that we don't have another tragedy within that family. And I think many of you know, and you've probably seen, that happens. Right, that happens. And so the goal of the state is to get all of us behavioral health providers together, and they did all last year. We had meetings after meetings after meetings of hearing back, getting feedback from all of us providers that do all different kinds of behavioral health work across the state. It's not perfect, but nothing is when it's good. It's got to take time, right? But we have a system now where we are partnering with people we maybe wouldn't normally partner with. We have situations that have arose that has required us to work together, and this, I'll tell you, it fused us behavioral health providers. We trauma bond. We trauma bonded, right? Because this was a lot. And it's going to continue to get better. It's not perfect, like I said. But we're in the second phase of this. So starting July 1 of this year, we move into that second phase, the second year of this. So we're still learning each other. We're still learning how this is going to work. Iowa Primary Care Association was the entity that was chosen to be the fiscal holder for the state. And so that's nice because it's just one entity versus, several like we had when we were dealing with the regions. So that makes it a little bit more streamlined when it comes to the communication regarding programs and how they're going to fund those and things like that. So I picked on District 5 just because the majority of our counties are in that district. And I'm going to step over here. So the state did an assessment. So this data goes to 2023, so we don't have current data. And one of the things when I was talking to Marty, I said, they said that only like 500 and some people have died by suicide in Iowa. I said, I don't think so. I didn't believe that number. And he says, I don't believe that number either. Right? And I learned a lot again in that conversation. So here you have District 5's risk factors. So some of the major risk factors are poverty. So nearly half of the counties in District 5, 43% of those have a higher percentage of people living below the poverty level. That's a pretty significant number, 43%. Poor mental health, over half of the counties, 64% of District 5 reported a higher number of poor mental health days per month compared to the state of Iowa. It ranges of poor mental health days were 4.1 to 4.9, and the average of poor mental health days per month were 4.5. Transportation. How many of you live in a rural area? Yeah. That's a big one. I believe a lot of people would probably seek services if they had the ability to get there. But a lot of them don't have that ability. Some don't even have cell phones. And then you have the mental health access. This is a one. Iowa's made up of a lot of rural counties, right? A lot of farming communities. A majority of those counties, 80%, 86% of those have a shortage of mental health professionals. 86%. That's just District 5. If I showed you the entire 7 districts, trust me, there's a theme. And we all chuckled when this came out because all of us who've been doing this for a couple decades were like, yeah, we know. Glad you're catching up, right? We already know this. Maybe you haven't put it in this context, but you know this too. Because if it's a tragedy, you're the second people to respond. So even though you didn't have this data, would you agree? And it's all across Iowa. It's not just District 5. Here is our overdose numbers for District 5. I'm just gonna let you take this in for a second. You know we're in an opioid crisis, right? One of my first jobs out of college was I was a substance abuse counselor. And man, some of the stories that I heard and the people that I saw that were struggling, it was astounding. It has significantly increased since then, and it's so sad. So in District 5, so from, let's see, we got all drugs involved, so this is all of the mortality rates, was higher in 2018 to 2023. I can't wait to see the data for 2025-26. Between suicides, homicides, and drug overdoses, the numbers are going to be astronomical. Our organization, like I said, we administered in 3 months, we administered services to 6 different families who lost their children to suicide. And 2 of those individuals were using drugs and substances. Yes.
Are these intentional or unintentional?
That's a great question. I don't have that data. That's a really good question, though. And this is where my spiciness comes out again, because I don't agree with these numbers. If I counted up all of the 14 counties that we've served in the last year, we'd have more than 13 deaths in less than a year. In less than a year. District 5 suicide mortality rate has been increasing between 2018 and 23, ranging from 13 deaths to 19 per 100,000 people in population. In 2023, the suicide mortality rate was 19 per 100,000, and higher than the state at 16 per 100,000. My question for you all is, do you agree with that? Am I the only one that's spicy in here? Yeah. No. So my question for you all, I do have a question, and I asked this to Marty, because I was not aware of this. Is it true that families get to decide what goes on that death certificate? Not true. Okay. No? Thank you. Okay. That clears that up. Because I'm like, how are we not recording all of these things? Because if somebody's in a car accident, did they die because they died in a car accident, or did they drown? Right? This is something.
If you choose to hit the tree, was it a suicide or was it an accident?
Yeah. And the only person that can determine that is the investigators, right?
Or the person that they.
Or, well,
I
if.
can't tell you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the role that NAMI Iowa takes is a significant one. If you stopped by my booth the last couple of days, you saw we had all of our programming out. And we provide services such as support groups. We do a lot of presentations for education. We do a lot of advocacy work. I've had the honor over the last 6 years to do a lot of work federally and locally on the legislative level. Work very closely with our politicians. At one point in time, I was an elected official, but I recently resigned because I'm in my quitting stage. Because I want to live my life, right? The role that we've played on the national level is pretty difficult. Trying to educate people in mental health, sometimes your passion just isn't enough. And so I've had to learn that this is a long game. I don't want a long game. I want it now. But it's a long game. We've got to build relationships with these legislators. We've got to educate these legislators. We have to tell them why we need the funding to be able to support the services that we are currently dispelling. So, I kind of kept you hanging on my story. In 2024, my cousin's son, who was 24 years old, lived with schizophrenia, and when he was a small child, he was diagnosed with autism. She did everything right. She's a nurse, so she knew all the things, right? She advocated for him from the time he was in school all the way up, got him to graduate. He was a productive citizen of society. He worked. And then about 2022, things started shifting a little bit. She started seeing the progression of the schizophrenia. And statistics show individuals, specifically with schizophrenia and autism, have a higher rate of being killed by the police because of misinterpretation of their behaviors. Is there anybody in here that ever worked in a school? Thank you. When I worked in the school, I was a coach. And there, to change the way we worked with mental health and behaviors in the school, it's a success coach is what it was called. And it was a positive behavioral health intervention service. And I learned back in 2018, I'm like, wow, a lot of these educators don't really get it. No offense. They don't get it. When children are having behaviors, it is a symptom of their illness or a symptom of their home life or a symptom of their circumstances, right? Well, Tyler was having symptoms. And so his mom, and trust me, this is not the first time the police have had to come to their house, a couple occasions, right? So there was documented. But when they came the other times, they came slow and easy. They took care of the situation with empathy and compassion. But for some reason, 2 years ago, they showed up like they were entering a war zone. So I'm going to paint this picture for you. You have a 24-year-old inside, just got in a fight with his 18-year-old brother. 18-year-old brother calls police because mom's not home because she had stepped out. And when he called the police, he said, my brother just kicked our dog. He's cycling, he's not doing well. Can you send somebody to come help him? Get him to calm down. He's in the basement right now. He has a small butter knife, fillet knife thing, or the pear knife. And he had a bread knife. In his home, in his basement, not hurting anybody, not hurting himself, because he was so unwell that day, he was isolating. The voices were too loud, right? Tristan is the 18-year-old that called the police. And he said, please do not hurt my brother. Multiple times said, please do not hurt my brother. He just needs help. And the police knew when they were coming that there was already a call into the judge. My cousin had just gotten guardianship of her son, which she did not have before. And they were supposed to come and take him into an acute setting. From the time they responded to the home, 9 minutes later, Tyler was shot twice and was laying on the floor suffering from the gunshot wounds. One cop shot with a assault gun, and simultaneously, the cop behind him, they started shooting. Tyler did not die on the floor that day. He later died at the hospital. When I got that phone call, I could not believe what I was hearing. I'm like, wait a minute, we just went through this last week. You were getting him help. We talked to the judge. They were supposed to come pick him up. Why did they not come get him? I will tell you, I have been, like I said, 26 years of doing this. I've seen some things. I worked in the streets of Polk County. I had a guy pull a machete on me when I was delivering his medication. The Polk County police came, and they came in hot, but they did not shoot my client. And my client had a machete waving it around. They talked him down because they're trained, right? So as I'm sharing this story, I'm sure things are going through your head, right? One, I want you to know I don't have anything against police officers. Two, I want you to understand that I know that in those moments they have to make a quick decision. I get that. I know that there are circumstances that it's either it's them or the other person, right? You have to make a quick decision. I honor that. This was not one of those situations. This was not one of those situations. This was a situation that could have been handled with care, with a little bit of integrity, and that young man could still be alive today. So with that, in that same year, I believe it was the same year, there was a lot of deaths, My cousin on my family, here's a little bit, you know, I get a little bit of my family tree, but growing up, I didn't know that I was Hispanic, okay? Didn't know who my dad was, yada, yada, all that stuff, right, that came along with all the garbage. And so, but I knew of these people, and I eventually found out, okay, who my dad is, okay? So there we got that genealogy out of the way. I got a phone call from my cousin, in which I don't have a real strong relationship with that side of the family, but they know what I do for a living. And they called me up and they're like, we need you. And I said, what is going on? And they said, Dario's daughter just took her life. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. Another county that we serve, and they've had several suicides. And those that are from Hardin County, you know, it doesn't take much to figure out who and whatnot, right? It impacts communities like no other. Just like Tyler, it impacts communities. Shocking. And what I learned in both of these circumstances is that no one comes. No one comes. What do I mean by that? No one came to my cousin when her child was shot. No one showed up to support her. No one showed up to help clean up a crime scene. She had to clean up her own son's crime scene. It's disturbing to me. So after I got my stuff together, I was able to get my central nervous system calmed down. I was able to pull myself together. Being that warrior that I am, I went to work. So I did this for Tyler and I did this for Lily. And I created what is called the compassion team. Because we want to show up for people. When you have such a tragedy like that, I really believe, and I've done this my whole life, is that you take that pain, you turn it into purpose, and you find the light out of that darkness. And this is the only way I knew how to do that. And I have the honor and the ability to be able to use the NAMI platform to be able to create something and use our peer support model. And so that's what we did with this compassion team. I'll tell you, I did not know I was speaking here. And I don't believe in coincidences. I truly believe that God is real and that He plants things the way that they're supposed to. We were working, we didn't even have our logo till 2 days before I was asked to speak here. We were just finalizing our tagline that we had, and then I was able to come here today and present it to you. So our mission is that we're committed to restoring hope to families, loved ones, friends, and community members impacted by suicide or any other violent crimes. Our mission statement is we're dedicated to restoring hope to families, loved ones, and communities across Central Iowa who've been affected by suicide or violent crime, and that we strive to to play a small, yet vital role by offering compassionate post-venture support through peer support program. So we walk alongside these individuals that we serve with meaningful connections and access to resources to meet their unique needs. One of the unique needs that I continue to see the theme is that when we have homicides and suicides, we don't have anybody calling the trauma unit here in Des Moines. No one's calling. I've had 3 of them. No one called. Then I got phone calls from people because they know what I do, and they're like, Roxanne, the 17-year-old child just had to carry a mattress out that his mom was shot on. I said, not again. And she's like, yeah. And I said, okay, well, we're going to do something about this. So with the compassion chain being born, we have administered and we've used this. So what we do is we show up. When they want us there, we show up. And we have these gift bags that we bring. It just has some paper plates, some napkins, maybe a gas card. It's got our resources and information. And it's a matter of knocking on the door. If we don't know them, we introduce ourselves. And we just say, if you need anything, we're here to support you. Most of the time we get invited in. Because when we lose people to suicide and homicide, there's always that question, why? Not that we can answer that completely, but that's where I use my story and I say, sometimes we don't see it because we're not meant to, because we hide it, right? We hide it. And in those moments, sometimes families need to hear that wow, you've experienced this. It just gives them just a small sense of connection and a tiny bit of relief. But like, oh, okay. And then that's all they can handle in those moments, right? Because we all know grief is weird. Weird. Sometimes they don't show up for years. Especially if you're someone like me who likes to shut down. Right? That's how I got all this fluff. Shoving it down. Not healthy. So this is just a slide I put together. You're all too familiar with this image, I'm sure. This is Tyler. With his little brother and his mom. And that's Miss Lily. I like to say their names because far too often we have families who don't have a Roxanne in their life yet that will stand up for them and that will advocate for them. So even though this is in memory of Tyler and Lily, this is for every Tyler and Lily. This is for every mom, every dad, every cousin, every grandpa, grandma, aunts, uncles, you name it. Army Central Iowa is ready to stand in where we're needed and to be able to support and to be able to connect. And one of our hopes here today is that those of you that do live in Iowa and you are in our catchment areas, I would love to talk more with you about partnering so that we can help provide extra services to those that you're serving as well. I always like to share a quote. Because how many of you have stories in here of maybe somebody in high school that really pissed you off? Or maybe junior high. Or I was an athlete, or maybe that one who you just couldn't wait to beat them. And I ran track and I couldn't wait to beat this girl, right? She was going to beat me in the mile. Like, you remember those things. So they may forget what you said, but they're never going to forget how you made them feel. Maybe you've got in a fight with your wife, or your husband. You don't forget, do we, ladies? How are you going to make up to us, right? That completes my presentation. Let's see how I did on time. Oh, I watched that. Am I good? Woo! All right. Any questions that you have for me this evening? Yeah?
I have an undocumented theory,
Okay.
because I think that part of what we do in the funeral process is when people actively are part of the funeral and work the good parts of it, which are visiting presentation and ceremony and finding a place of memory and work those processes, they come out in a much better mental health position at the end of that. And we have seen a reduction in the amount of funeralization that families will engage in. Where it used to be a week, now it's an hour. It used to be that people got off work and came and supported. They don't do that anymore. And I think that that has caused an increase in mental health issues because people have unresolved grief that they have not worked through. Okay? We see this in families where the long-term effects of not working the process at the time of the death extends. And so, do you, again, that's but do you see this, people?
I agree, and to extend on it too, especially if you do a direct cremation with no service.
Exactly. They have not worked through, if you work with a family, it's movement manages emotion, okay? If you take a week with a family, they are in a much better position than when you take an hour. When they come in and all they do is give you death certificate information, they sign their cremation papers and they're out of here. Because they think that they're gonna be able to handle it better if they do it that way. But if you've been with them for a week, now they've worked it. They've had the family come, the community come around. Have you experienced this with people?
I think that's a I think that's a perfect lens to see that through. And it goes back to that connection, right? And grief is weird. It's been 2 years since Tyler died. And this is in litigation. I can share that. I have a lady in my wellness and recovery center who just fell over. She passed out. I thought she died. And I don't know what happened that day, but it took me back in the body, because there's a book out there that says the body keeps the score. It's a real thing. And it brought me about those feelings back up, right? Because I don't deal well with that. And so, when I think about the time grieving someone, I can't remember who it was that I talked to in the last couple of days, and they said that you never get over it. It's always, you learn to live with it. Yeah, you learn to live with it. And I think sometimes too, just to piggyback off of that, we don't know how to grieve. Some of us just don't know how. Like, my cousin is my best friend. She's my go-to. She's the one I call and tell all the things about, right? Gossip all the things. I couldn't do that. And I felt trapped with these emotions. And do I have a right to feel the way that I'm feeling? This wasn't my child, but yet I was feeling all of these emotions. And it took for me to utilize Allison from the Central Iowa Trauma Unit to give me permission. It's okay that you feel this way. This is your experience too. But I didn't think I had it right. And I would imagine there's a lot of people out there that feel that exact same way.
And these families that say, oh, just when I'm dead, just cremate me, I don't need service. Okay, that's discounting all the relationships, all the people who are not immediate family, but they love you.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
They're getting cut off from that.
Yeah.
So that's how part of what we do works with what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.